Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення великої страны. Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 685 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russians are getting destroyed. Who would have guessed that? I'm telling you.
And I'm telling you what, the Russians are getting destroyed worse than anything we've really seen so far. It's actually pretty insane, because what happened in Krynky today really put a crank in the Russians' battle plans and also order a battle, because it looks like the VDV ended up getting a pretty bad thing. I mean, it's pretty bad, but nevertheless, we're going to be getting into that tonight. No?
Oh, it's real ugly. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Oh, man, the Russian battle plan's so ugly. Real ugly. Oh, man, when the Russian generals looked at them, they killed themselves. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
But nevertheless, we're going to be getting into all of the major news that's happened over the past 48 hours inside of Ukraine, and also, while I don't have any news bulletins on it, we may speak a little bit about the situation going on in the Korean Peninsula at the moment, as while it has not turned into a full-blown war, we are hearing some pretty fiery rhetoric from Little Rocket Man in North Korea, and it appears that this is starting to cause some tremors in the East Asian world. So we'll be going over there maybe way later on the stream and talking about it a little bit with y'all, because I know many of y'all have been hearing the news of what's going on over there, and we may even talk a small amount about the quiet occurrence of what's going on near the Gulf of Aden, and also the Persian Gulf as well with the Iranians. But we have a lot of news to cover inside of Ukraine tonight, and that will be the priority news that we get to first. We'll get to all that other stuff maybe later in the stream, even if we get to it. And that really depends if y'all want to hear it or not. If y'all do, I'll make sure to drop over there and kind of give y'all a synopsis. If not, we'll just keep with the Ukraine news. But moving on into the big news that we have today, and I actually wanted to address this first because someone actually has already thrown in a super chat about this. Mark Gagne, channel legend, has thrown in a $5 Canadian super chat. Now I got to thank you for that. And he said, tell us about the jet-powered Shahed 238. And we actually have a picture of the proof that the first Shahed 238 has ever been used in Ukraine. This is the jet-powered version of the Shahed. We can tell that it's the Shahed Platinum because this one's painted in black instead of white. And we all know black is a lot more menacing and scary. But the big difference in between the old Shahed that we're used to and this one is that instead of using an like a nitro-powered propeller, this one uses a small jet engine. I'll be showing you all the picture right there. It's one of your normal, like, hobby store jet engines that you can put onto your RC jet at home, but they put it into
Man, what hobby store has that type of jet engine? Let me know. I need to go find one.
You know what? I'm actually going to go pull up RC jet engines, because I swear you can get one of these things. Not that expensive. I mean, they're like, in terms of military costs, they're not that expensive. Here's one on AliExpress right there, the SW60B. It's 6 kilograms, pretty damn big, for 2,800.
Man, that's not a hobby engine. That is literally like a legit little like mini jet engine. Like you can't use that one like a little hobby aircraft or anything. That's a serious thing.
Well, maybe these from the model aircraft company are more up what we're looking for, but these are pretty much the engines. Golly! Oh my God! These things are expensive. Like $3,000 for this little thing? Good God!
Are euros more or less expensive, or more valuable than the dollar?
More valuable than the dollar. I think right now a euro is worth $1.24-25.
Damn. So these are like hefty. These are pricey.
Yeah, this one right here is probably about $1,500. And that's on the smaller end. But, you know, still, in military, while this is expensive to us, in military terms, this is relatively cheap. Although it is adding a lot of cost to what was supposed to be a cheap and inexpensive Shahed 136 drone, because the little RC propeller engines that they've been using so far only cost, I think, about $300-400 is what our estimates have been. These are starting to run up into the $1,800 to $2,000 range, so greatly increasing the actual price of this drone for the Russians to field. Nevertheless, this is the first time that we've ever seen one of these, and these are the pictures that prove that there was a jet engine mounted to this drone. And this confirms that it is this specific variant of the drone. It's the Shahed let me make sure, it's like 286 or the 236, one or the other. But really quickly, let me make sure. I gotta double check. Gotta make sure I get the name right. Yeah, it's the Shahed 238. So this is the one. It's very rough looking. Well, not really that rough looking. Honestly, it looks better in black, but still, it is your normal Shahed kamikaze drone, just jet powered. We're assuming that this may give it an increase in speed, but this is not going to make it any more difficult to shoot down. These aircraft are not going supersonic, and even if they were, ground-mounted anti-air systems like the Gepard could most likely still track this target and end up shooting it down, although it will be a little bit more difficult for the tracking computer to calculate the lead because of its total airspeed. Nevertheless...
And also, I'm no engineer, and I don't profess to be either, but I think putting black as a paint color is not a good idea for the electronics. I think that causes stuff to overheat, and that's why we don't put our drones in black. We put them in gray.
Well, Matthew, as you know, the Iranians are not necessarily the smartest people when it comes to weapons development. They have that freaking ugly light attack helicopter, after all. So I don't think they're like the people we ought to go to and be like, ah, yes, they know weapons development. Because, you know...
Oh, they definitely don't, for sure. Like, even me, not being an engineer or anything, like, I don't know who they have working on these things, but why would you paint it in black? That's the worst thing. Even the rendering is in gray, but they painted the real one black.
Dude, they painted it black because it looks cool, man. You ought to know this. But anyways, moving on from that, I wanted to make sure to cover that first tonight because that was probably a little bit of a bizarre thing that we saw. Was the first instance of a jet-powered Shahed drone being used. But moving on from that, and on into our next little bit of news, it's time for us to quickly move on to Oryol in Russia. This is an oblast practically nobody's ever heard about. In fact, it's never been brought up before because not even the Wagner group went through Oryol. They went through the Voronezh Oblast and the Lipetsk Oblast on their way to Moscow. This oblast here has practically been unspoken of the entire war, and nothing has ever happened here. If anything ever happens as far as the Ukraine war goes inside of Russia, it's always in Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod, or Rostov-on-Don, or in the area down here near Krasnodar, one or the other. But Oryol is completely unheard of, and there's an interesting reason why. Usually it's just overlooked. There's not really a lot in Oryol. Most stuff is closer to the Ukrainian border, so Oryol has been overlooked for a very long time. However, one thing that's really interesting about Oryol is that it has a fairly large oil silo inside of it, and I'm going to try and see if I can find this for y'all on the Google satellite view. I think it's up here closer to the northern end of the city, and sadly, I just can't find it. And also, really quickly, just in case y'all are like, what the hell does Oryol look like? Well, it does not look like an Oreo. Here's some pictures of Oryol. At least these are the better parts of town. But here's some pictures showing y'all what it looks like. Well, you can see this giant eagle, squaw! And you can also see these little ducks. I mean, overall, they actually did try to make... Well, here we go. Here's real Oryol. It's like, we went from the Department of Tourism pictures to the real pictures of Oryol, and it's not that hot. It's not that great. It's looking a little rough. Wait a minute. Is that a mural of the arch that is of Sevastopol? And what does it say up there at the top? Reskoy Slava, I think. Interesting. We'll keep that in mind here in a minute. Also, we got this little doggo here, kind of precious looking, kind of fluffy.
It was a little bit desperate, to be honest. He looks like help me.
Man, he's like, get me out of here, on God. He's like, it sucks here, man. Do you know what they eat? They eat me. They get desperate enough, they eat me and horses. But also, beyond like just the general pictures of the city, I don't really know a lot about the history of Oryol. I can usually give y'all a little bit of a tidbit on some city inside of Russia, but Oryol is just such an insignificant town historically, from what I understand. There's not really a lot that I know about it. But one thing I do know is that the Ukrainians smacked a couple of drones down in Oryol today and ended up attacking some of the oil depots that were there. We can see the smoke rising from the explosions. We may actually be able to geolocate this picture looking at it up close. So this appears to be near some kind of a rail yard. We can see a jutting out section of rail heading left. So we know that this is up here near the rail yards. So let's see here. We didn't see a rail yard like that, so I bet it's further on in the city, maybe even further on south. I think we may have found what we were looking for. It looks like the picture was taken somewhere around maybe here, looking this way, because we can see some high rises over here. So it appears that whatever it is, it may have been hit near this rail depot here. That may be where this oil storage site was. It has to be somewhere in this area, however. Nevertheless, we can see a pretty thick plume of black smoke rising from the explosion. We can also see the oil silos in that picture right there near this rail yard, indicating that it was a solid hit, and the Ukrainians were able to call this a success. The Russians have actually been freaking out about this attack, or at least the amalgamation of attacks that the Ukrainians have been able to pull off on Russian border cities with incredibly good success rates, because the Russian government came out with an official statement today saying that they were now going to deal with the Ukrainian drone attacks hitting Belgorod, at least, by all means necessary. We have a feeling that probably will not succeed. Russian air defenses are poorly trained, highly inadequate. Not only that, they are thinly dispersed now due to the incredibly high losses that they've taken over the 2 years of war. So we are expecting that they will probably not be able to defend Belgorod, Kursk, Bryansk, and even Oriel, which is the farthest back city of the frontline cities for the most part, but still showing some great success. The Russians, of course, while the Ukrainians have been conducting their sparse but strategically placed air attacks on the Russian border cities, the Russians have still been continuing to try and attack Ukrainian infrastructure both by drone and by cruise missile. And one of those cruise missiles actually failed, and we got a picture of it in the area of Volgograd, where we got to see that one of the missiles, can't really tell the exact variant, I'm guessing it's an X-101, failed and ended up just skidding its way to a stop in one of the fields in Volgograd. We don't know exactly where in the oblast this was. I'm having a feeling it was most likely towards Volgograd's southern end, most likely around Oktyabrysky, somewhere in that area. That's where I'm guessing, because usually we see that the bombers that carry these missiles, like the Ilyushin, let me think. It's the Ilyushin 96, I believe. It's no, it's the Tupolev 160 and the Tu-95s. The Tu-95s and the Tupolev 160s usually take off from places like Saratov and Ryazan. They fly south all the way across Russia to the Caspian Sea. They orbit in the northern part of the Caspian Sea. They fire off their missiles towards Ukraine, and they usually take a arched, well, on this map, since it's a flat projection, it's an arched trajectory into Ukraine, meaning that they will pass over that very southern tip of the Volgograd Oblast. So we're assuming that this area is most likely accurate from everything that we know, but at the moment, take it with a grain of salt. The geolocation may not be entirely accurate on that marker, but that is our rough estimate of where that missile failure ended up landing. Moving on from that, however, a lot of missiles have ended up hitting their target a lot closer to Ukraine, inside of Sevastopol, and the Russians are starting to consider deep strikes by Ukraine an incredibly serious threat to all elements, all higher-end elements of the Russian war in Ukraine, including the Russian Air Force and the Russian Navy. As many of you all know, right before the end of last year, the Ukrainians were able to successfully wipe out over the past year and 10 months a quarter of the Russian Navy's surface fleet, and also something around 20% of its operational submarine forces. This is a big thing for Ukraine, a very big thing, and it's also making sure that Russia's strategic ambitions in the future are going to be greatly hindered because they no longer have the competent, well, not competent, but at least sizable navy to try and take care of the problems that they face. And when we go to Sevastopol, I think the satellite footage may even show us remnants. Actually, it's not still at the moment, sadly. I was about to say it may show us remnants of the successful Ukrainian attacks, but one thing it will show us is something that y'all will never see again: Rapucha-class landing ships moored side by side. If y'all don't know, every single one of the Rapucha-class landing ships has either been destroyed or damaged so heavily that it's currently in refit in a dry dock somewhere and probably will not be in service until the end of the war. You'll never see these ships side by side again. In fact, these two may not even exist anymore. They may be sitting at the bottom of a harbor, at the bottom of the sea, wherever they ended up being destroyed, along with maybe some other ships a little bit further down the way, although I don't know where the training vessel is. I think that one was just in Feodosia. But nevertheless, this picture is not even accurate anymore, because the Russians have become so concerned about the compromised security of the city of Sevastopol as far as Ukrainian attacks being successful have gone, that we're now seeing that Novorossiysk has pretty much become the primary port that the Russian Black Sea Fleet is operating out of. Whether the Russians wanted to be there or not is not the question. The Russian Black Sea commanders have apparently decided that the only way to ensure that some of the Navy survives the war is to try and move them as far away out of range as possible, and the only place that could do that, and it doesn't even do that all too well, is Novorossiysk. When I'm talking about
still, the Ukrainians still have weapons to hit them in Novorossiysk too, don't they? Like that's far away, further away, but they're still not untouchable at this point.
That's exactly right, and that's kind of the thing about it. the Russians, no matter what, because there are two port options, are either Sevastopol or Novorossiysk. Regardless which one they choose, they're both within Ukrainian striking range, and that has been proven with video and picture evidence before. At this point, it's really just about picking which one is going to be a little bit more difficult for Ukraine to strike. And out of the two, Novorossiysk probably would be. The Ukrainians have a larger amount of drones overall of different kinds that can reach Sevastopol and hit it, along with missiles, but the same cannot be said for Novorossiysk. Novorossiysk is not in missile range of Ukraine, but it is within drone range, so it's greatly limiting the kind of weapons that Ukraine can send towards the port, but it's still not entirely out of range and safe, because we have seen Ukrainian drone attacks reach as far south as Sochi, so we know that really nowhere in the Black Sea the Russian Navy would be safe, but this is a better option than Sevastopol in their minds. And Matthew, you're not going to believe it. The Russian Navy is fitting into this small mooring down here, the Vostochny Rayon, right here. This thing is made as like a small outpost for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Just kind of a different port for some ships to locate in, so that way they can prowl project along the Caucasus Mountain Range coastline and kind of areas of Georgia. That's really what this is meant for, kind of a QRF base for that part of the Black Sea Fleet. This place
Man,
is...
you know the Russians are scared. They're trying to cram all their like fine or what they call fine warships into a little like rinky-dink harbor like that. They're like, we gotta haul them all the way from Crimea back to our mainland and try to cram them into a harbor that they're not designed to fit in. Like that's just a pure fear on their part.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's really warranted too, because Ukraine's going to keep hitting them no matter where they are.
Oh yeah, and look at this. I mean, this is crazy. Here is the large overview picture of Vostochny Rayon, which is where all these ships are moored inside of the harbor. It's tiny. Look at that. This is a very small part of Novorossiysk port. It's the only part that can be used by the Navy, by the way. But look, every single spot of usable real estate has a ship moored at it. And when we get a close-up, it's pretty damn bad. They have 2 kilos right here, and when I say right here, they have 2 kilos, one here and one moored right over here. This is kind of like their submarine pin for the most part. And we can also see that the only surviving Rapucha class, from which we understand is still lightly damaged and being refitted, is right about here, where the mouse cursor is circling. They also have the Vishnya intelligence ship, which is one of the auxiliary ships of the Black Sea Fleet, moored just south of that. And then on the other side, they have the Goria class, which is like a small coastal patrol vessel moored right over on this side of this small little submarine pin area. Then in the next picture, we can see that the other Kilo-class submarine is moored right over here. They're hardly even able to fit it in. Like, it's almost on the shore at this point. And we can also see, beyond that... Oh, hey, by the way, I forgot to say this. They actually are updating this part of the port. I'm pointing out the wrong spot, because right here they're actually laying down the piers, pretty much, to make a new dock. This submarine is actually right here, where this barge is, and where it's trying to build a small amount of infrastructure to house the Russian Navy that's quickly running this way, but that submarine's actually right there. We can see the Admiral Grigovich class, Admiral Makarov right there. We can also see another Rapucha class landing ship right there. We can also see 2 of the Project 22 160s, which are the brand new coastal patrol vessels, the ones that look kind of stealth. We can see those right there. We can see one of their supply ships, the Sparta 4, and we can also see the Admiral Grigovich class, Admiral Essen, right there. Then in our last picture, we can see that they just crammed in everything else wherever they could. And I have to say, though, that it is kind of odd, because we are counting more Rapucha class landing ships in these pictures than should be surviving. We understand that one of them has survived. According to our official reports that we've been getting, I think almost all of them have been sunk except for the one, and that one's still lightly damaged. So the date on this picture might be inaccurate, because I don't think our casualty numbers are matching up to the amount of Rapucha class landing ships that are surviving in these pictures. But beyond that, we can see that every other ship has been crammed in. The other 2 Project 22 160s, because the Black Sea Fleet has 4 of them, are also moored at Novorossiysk as well at this point. And these are considered, while not the heaviest hitting and hardest fighting ships of the Black Sea Fleet, these are considered Russia's newest and some of the most expensive ships that they have in the fleet. All of them have been moved to Novorossiysk, so that way they won't end up being destroyed in port of Sevastopol. So going off of
Well, here's my question. Why doesn't Russia simply just keep their ships on the move at sea instead of docking them all in this small little harbor? Like, what's the rationale behind not keeping them moving?
It is wildly expensive, and also a huge drain on fuel. One thing that's actually wild historically is that navies consume more resources at sea than it's even believable. Countries like, for example, Britain found out that during World War I and World War II, the entire Royal Navy could not be at sea at all times, simply because there, in the First World War, just wasn't enough coal to supply all of these ships with if the entire nation just diverted all of their coal to the Navy. And then in World War II, it was found out that they wouldn't have enough oil for them either, because they had moved on from coal to oil in between the two wars. Even now, that's actually a serious issue. Most countries just simply do not have the logistical ability to fuel oil-powered ships and keep them at sea. And that's kind of a big benefit of having nuclear-powered ships like the U.S. Navy has with the Nimitz and Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carriers, is that because they're nuclear-powered, not only does that remove the requirement of having them return to port to refuel, it also greatly simplifies the logistical chain for the Navy, because they never have to account for fuel consumption unless if it's over an incredibly long period of time for those aircraft carriers. That's something that the Russians do not have the luxury of. Every single one of these is an oil-powered warship. And so, because of that, if they want to send them out to sea, they would most likely have to set them to economic cruise mode, which is about 7 knots. That means that they would not be quick enough to avoid anything, and they would most likely get destroyed at sea anyway. So it would be a lot cheaper and a lot easier to just keep them moored at port and just let them sit there and pray that nothing happens to them.
But it seems like the odds of them getting destroyed and hit inside the small little harbor is probably higher than it would be if they were at sea. And not trying to give Russia pointers here, and they're not going to listen anyway because they're stupid. But the fuel costs versus the cost of a new ship, I think it might be cheaper just to give some fuel to the boat and get the thing moving.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but it's still tough. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention this, Matthew. This is how tough it is logistically to run a navy, like resource-wise. And I'm going to take you back to World War I really quickly because I know the story. The Titanic, and ships like that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
But
way back in the day, Britain had loads of ships like that. Of course, the Titanic had already sunk by the time World War I came around. So it was the Olympic, the Britannic, the Lusitania, the Mauretania, and I think a few others. I think there was maybe another one or two in there that I'm forgetting. But to run those ships, because they decided at the beginning of World War I, the Royal Navy was like, oh, look, we can use these vessels, for admiralty purposes, because that's in the agreement with, White Star Line and Cunard. Let's just use these ships as, cargo transports and troop transports. Why not? That would probably be a good move. And then someone in the Royal Navy crunched the numbers and said, if we ran just these 5 ships, in 4 months, the entire nation of Britain will be out of coal. And there just wouldn't be enough coal. There wouldn't even be enough miners digging coal out of the ground to keep these ships running and the Royal Navy at the same time. So then they decided, you know what, let's just keep them where they are and never really use them. And then the Lusitania ended up being the only one out of them all that was able to run during the war, and that, of course, ended in disaster in 1916 when it was sunk by a German U-boat 15 miles off the coast of Ireland, which pissed off America because there's Americans on board and it's unrestricted submarine warfare, which pissed us off. But that's a whole other thing. But beyond that, you can kind of get a glimpse just from the World War I example of how logistically complex and overwhelming it can be to keep the Navy running at full speed at all times. And that's why a lot of ships just end up moored at port for the most time, and then they get rolled out whenever there's action that's needed.
Interesting. So I guess the Russians just have to sort of prepare for a rainy day, because I'm sure they're going to get hit again, and their ships are going to get destroyed. And they don't have the money to replace the ships. If they can't buy the fuel, they're definitely not going to be able to fix the ship or replace it. So that's good news for Ukraine.
Oh yeah, great news. And just another small thing before we move on. That's also another reason why the U.S. Navy is so incredible. Because while everyone always talks about numbers, and I actually got blasted, y'all, by some conceited viewer or whatever in the chat who's talking about, oh, just because the Chinese Navy isn't larger, it doesn't mean it's better. And we've covered that before on stream. And I was like, what the hell are you even talking about? Obviously, duh. But nevertheless, one thing that makes the U.S. Navy impressive is that while it technically doesn't beat China in numbers, it beats it in its ability to persist at sea. The Chinese have very few, I believe they don't really have any nuclear-powered ships. I'll have to go back and check on that, but at the moment I don't think they do. That means that they always have to return back to a Chinese port to refuel. U.S. ships never have to refuel, and that's the most laborious and complex part of a logistical process for a ship. Transporting food and supplies over to keep the crew living, that's actually something that can be done underway at sea. So That's what makes the U.S. Navy so impressive, is that a nuclear aircraft carrier like the Gerald R. Ford or a Nimitz class can stay at sea practically indefinitely if it needed to. And there's really no need for it to return unless if a tender ship couldn't get out to it and supply it with, say, food or supplies for the crew, then they would have to return to port. But beyond that, they could remain at sea indefinitely. And that's another reason why the U.S. Navy is able to power project so much better than our rivals, like the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, which is just an interesting side note. Another thing to marvel at the U.S. military-industrial complex, truly the best of its kind in the world. But moving on from...
We got the best military in every respect. Like, we really do take our military for granted, or at least a good portion of the Americans do. Like, we have, by far, the most competent, capable, and also well-equipped military around the world. Like, China may be well-equipped in quantity, but they don't have the people to run the ships. They don't have the people that are qualified like our pilots. And don't get me wrong, they have good pilots and they have good people occasionally, but our military as a whole has really, really competent people. And, Russia, nor China, or anybody has anything on it.
Oh yeah, and that's completely true as well. And I see a lot of people, and this is a great point because I didn't bring it up, but a lot of the ships like the Arleigh Burkes that end up being escorts in the carrier groups, they do have to refuel. But what's the great thing about that is that you can just take those and switch them out. You can just take an Arleigh Burke that's moored at port and say, go and meet with the fleet and replace the Arleigh Burke that has to return for refueling. And there you go. Your carrier task groups are able to stay at sea practically indefinitely. The carrier can stay. Of course, the actual escort to the carrier will switch out over time with multiple different ships because they, of course, have to return and refuel. But still, in theory, the carrier group as a whole, as a existent thing, can stay at sea for as long as it needs to. But y'all are correct. The smaller escort vessels like the Arleigh Burke class destroyers do have to return. But I think, actually, really quickly, not to rabbit hole too much, I think the Ticonderoga classes, and I think those are a part of the carrier groups, are in fact nuclear powered. Let me make sure.
They also make good pencils, Ticonderoga. This is a really good
get
pencil.
the hell out of here.
Good graphite. Graphite on the ground. I see it. Make a pencil.
There's no graphite. There's no graphite on the ground. So let's see here. Propulsion. Oh, no, the Ticonderoga is actually run by gas turbines. So I don't know which ship I'm thinking of that's the nuclear-powered one, because there is some kind of a cruiser, a missile cruiser that we had or have that is nuclear-powered, but apparently I'm not able to think of it at the moment. But anyways, or I could be completely wrong, one or the other. But anyways, moving on from that little bit of news, it's now time for us to move on into... well, more so out of the Navy news, and on towards what I would say is some fairly interesting news in Zhytomyr. The Ukrainian SBU has been hard at work, and apparently there are some people in Ukraine who are still up to some shady things. And I'm not saying, your shady things like, taking bribes to let people cross the border. I'm talking about people who are siding with the wrong side of history. I'm talking about people who are actually helping out the Russians. Believe it or not, while many people in Ukraine know what the Russians are about and absolutely hate them, there are always a few misguided people out there who are always going to side with the wrong cause, even if it's not in their interests. Historically, there's always been people like this, and Ukraine is having to deal with them as well. The SBU ended up arresting today a collaborator with the Russians who was found to be sending sensitive data and information over his phone to a Russian handler and trying to tell him the location of Ukrainian forces within the Kyiv and Zhytomyr area. This is something that is very important for the Ukrainians to manage. And this is something that's also brought up a great deal of controversy in the anti-Ukraine community, because an American who went to Ukraine and blasted them ended up getting arrested around early last year and is still being held in a Ukrainian prison to this day. There's a good reason why. This guy did the same thing that this guy did. This guy went to Ukraine in the middle of a war, blasted Ukraine, supported the Russians, and, that's a thing in itself. That's always concerning, and that's something that you might not be able to do in any country when they're at war with their enemy and you're openly supporting the enemy publicly. But the worst thing that the guy did is that he drove around Kyiv, and in his spare time, he took pictures of almost all of the air defense batteries and stations that he could, and he just emailed them to a Russian handler and told them exactly where Ukrainian air defenses were and helped them to try and find weak spots in Kyiv's air defense perimeter. That ended up getting the guy arrested, and he's still in prison to this day. And it appears that this guy is probably also going to end up with a very similar fate, in prison, probably for quite a while. It's not a
Just out of curiosity, I wonder how the Ukrainian SBU was able to find out that he was sending those pictures on email, because unless somebody tipped them off, like maybe the Russian that was receiving the photos, it's like, how did they get wind that he was doing that?
That's a good point. I don't really know how. Maybe they did like a sting operation, maybe. I don't really know, but it's still interesting to see that they were able to find the guy. And I'm sure that, well, I don't know. In martial law, they may not give him a trial. They may just hold him, and not give him a trial, and then wait until after the war. But he is going to be in prison for quite a while, most likely, due to this. And it's very interesting to see that some people are choosing the wrong side, but it's good to know that the SBU is on top of things and trying to make sure that security breaches do not happen wherever it's possible. Moving on from that little bit of news and out of the Zhytomyr area, we also got to hear that the Ukrainian air defense did quite well yesterday. Apparently, they were able to shoot down 8 out of 8 Shahed 136s and 18 out of the 24 KH-101s and 555s and 55s that were launched into Ukraine. It was a fairly good interception rate overall, and of course ensured that many Ukrainian lives were saved on the ground, which is a very important thing as far as the war is concerned. But moving on from that little bit of news, and on into probably some of the spicier news of the night, it's time for us to get on into those location unknowns. And we're going to be skipping over yesterday's. We already covered it. It's the jet-powered Shahed. And I'd also like to thank Mark Gagne for the super chat and also pointing that out, because you helped me to get to that news very early and gave me an excuse to do it. But moving on from that into today's location unknowns, we got to see a Russian dugout get destroyed. And what's funny about this is that the dugout gets hit. It's on fire. Like, it's on fire right now in the video. Just got hit. And so this Russian goes, "Bliet, let me film a TikTok, Bliet." And he stands in front of his burning dugout and he's like, "We got hit. It's on fire and it's burning to the ground." It's almost like insurance fraud, but here's the clip.
Здравствуйте, товарищи. Сегодня 6 января 2024 года, на второй половине дня, были атакованы FPV-дроном зажигательной смесью. Посмотрите, что у нас получилось. Погибли все личные вещи, документы, оружие, боеприпасы. Я вас очень прошу, помогите нам, пожалуйста.
Since this is a TikTok, I thought maybe he's going to give us a house tour or something, or hit the gritty, but he didn't either.
Dude, it's a day in the life of video. He goes, "I get up in the morning and I put my boots on over my trench foot-ridden feet. I then get up and I go outside and I wipe my teeth down with a piece of bark. Then my bunker gets hit by a drone. Oh no! Well, it burned down to the ground, but it's okay. I can get another one with 900 million rubles. I then went to the..."
Why is he so calm? Like, his dugout's burning to the ground and it's going to be destroyed, and he's standing here talking casually like he's just talking to his pals in the vodka bar.
You know what, Matthew? I think we just clicked 2 and 2 together right there. I think you're a genius, Matthew. I think this guy is plastered ass drunk, and he just accidentally set the thing on fire, and so now they're standing outside of it with the thing burning down behind them. They're like, "We have to explain this to our commander somehow." So they tried to film this video as a cover, probably.
Or Ivan, did you set this on fire yourself, Ivan? He's acting like maybe he might be crazy enough to have some involvement in it. Like maybe he lit a match and threw some vodka down there or something. Like he's acting a little bit off.
Dude, there is something off with this guy, man. And look at how he's staring at the camera. He's staring at it like this man eats pennies. Like, he's got a weird look on his face, I'm not gonna lie. Pretty bizarre looking. But anyways, we're moving on from that one. And on into the next one, where we got to see a Ukrainian T-72 in training. And I think this is a T-72 EA, if I remember. EA Sports is in the name. But nevertheless, we got to see that this one's a part of the 14th Assault Brigade, Chernova-Kalina of the Ukrainian National Guard. They're currently way north in the Kupiansk area, but considering that this is on a training field, we don't know where this was. But we can see it moving around out there in the fields, doing its thing. Of course, the crew getting some good training in and trying to make sure that they'll be ready to fight once they move to the lines. And we can also see them firing the main gun right there. Almost like in an indirect fire mode. The gun is actually at a pretty decent angle, but nevertheless, pretty nice to see and great
like
to know.
Shooting flames, man, like straight up gasoline coming out of that turret. Look at that, it's like a flamethrower.
Well, did you say gas? Watch out, some guy who sells hot dogs is about to come.
Aw,
man.
You can't smoke this gas. This gas will end up smoking you instead.
Anyways, that's the end of the clip, right? Very nice to see, though, the training occurring, and hopefully this is going to be honing the 14th Brigade skills, so that way they can defend against the Russian pushes in the north a lot better. And by the way, before we even get to it, not to hype y'all up, but we actually have some footage today from the area around Yahidne showing a Ukrainian counterattack occurring, and it is some wild stuff. Very wild stuff, but we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. We have to get through the rest of the location unknowns first. But moving on to our next one, we also got to see that some Ukrainian soldiers were having some fun. They called it role-playing. I don't know about that. I just call it kidding around, but here's the clip.
Is that some ramen?
Man, he's taking it over with a tray.
Man, he's got some ramen and a Colt 45, man. This is a hell of a dinner.
That's it. Dude, this guy's going, man, I am living.
Give me my beer and give me my ramen. Get a little whiff, waft it. Oh, yes. Good ramen. Quality. Top noodle.
Dude, your average Marine in Okinawa.
Hell yeah.
He's like, ramen and a Colt 45. Oh, man. Oh, man, and he's sipping it. He's happy. Oh, yeah, man. It's a good
Colt
line.
45 meets his standards. He's like, yes, sir. What's he walking off like that for, though?
Bro, he's styling, man. Look at him. He pimping.
Dude, man, he's got a radiation symbol on the back of his helmet too. This is a chaotic scene.
He's delusional. Send him to the infirmary. But I gotta say, man, these guys know how to have fun. What a funny little skit right here. I love to see it. And also, yeah, William, you're right. I didn't even point that out. The cardboard is actually a menu. There's writing on it. Look, you can see it just a little bit. You can see the marker right there.
This guy got something that wasn't even on the menu. He got that secret menu stuff. He said, let me have this stuff in the secret menu, please.
Dude, I gotta tell you, man, I love Ukrainian humor like this. It's great. And also, it keeps the morale up, because they're just making sure to pass the time, as the war goes on. But moving on from that and into our last bit of location unknown news, we got to see the Russian losses today. And oh, buddy.
Oh, it's looking good today. I'm telling you. Lovely.
Oh, dang! 5 Bobcat skid steers destroyed, along with 820 Russian soldiers, 9 armored personnel carriers, 10 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 6 artillery pieces, 1 drone, 1 MLRS, 18 cruise missiles. It was a pretty good day overall. I gotta say, I'm very impressed with this. It's showing that the Ukrainian defenders are doing a very good job holding the Russians back. And not only that, it is showing that the Russians are continuing to keep a very high attrition rate going for themselves. All of these losses are largely being taken in Russian offensive attacks. This means that the Ukrainians are not attacking the Russians to take out these kinds of forces. This is what the Russians are practically doing to themselves, punching themselves in the face multiple times and then asking how they got the bruise.
They're good at that.
They're very good at that. And you know who they'll blame it on? America. Or the Western world for the most part. But
they'll be wearing all their Adidas, their NASA hat and all that good stuff, their nice Oakley sunglasses, and they'll say, screw America, bliad. I hate that country. It's so terrible.
Man, they'll sit there and go, Americans don't even have heating and cooling in their house, as they sit by their fireplace that's fueled by wood. It's like, yeah, good job.
Now, one thing that they will never be able to say that's not incorrect is they do all have nice TVs, but that's for a reason. Like, we have nice TVs because we watch Netflix. They have it because they got to watch, that Soliev guy, like, to their detriment.
Matthew, it just hit me, all right? This is going to sound stupid and very cliche. But Russia is literally 1984 when you think about it. Like the crappy living conditions, but they all have the propaganda TV in the house.
Yeah, man, they can't eat, but they sure can watch Soliev have a like a what they call it, cocaine stupor live on the air.
Man, watch out, man. In America, we have thought crimes. In Russia, they have thought crimes.
Man, that's wild. What the hell? I know how you came up with that.
Man, I came up with that on the spot. I was like, they sound similar. Let's go with it. But still, moving on from the jokes about the Russians and moving on towards our frontline news, now it's time for us to get into the real action of the day. The frontline fighting. There was a decent amount of it. And this first clip that we're going into in this area is showing us a fairly interesting scene. And I think this requires me to do a little bit of recap here because we don't really talk about this area of the frontline much. There's just not really a lot of data that comes out on this thing. And so I don't really get to tell y'all much about it. But here's what's going on. Here's kind of the scoop. Russian forces were pushed back after the offensive in mid-2022 all the way back past Kupiansk. They were pushed back to the area of Tokarivka. The Russians have been conducting offensive efforts to try and push back towards Kupiansk and take it. It's at the very mouth of the Seversky Donets River inside of Ukraine, or at least where it widens up. It's an important bridgehead to cross, and therefore it's an important one for the Russians to control. Because of this, an offensive has been moving from Vilshana towards Sinkivka for quite a while, and we've also seen a smaller Russian push that is a part of this major offensive in the direction of Orlansky and Yahidne. Russian forces have continuously been attempting for several months at this point to try and break Ukrainian forces in this area and make it to Kupiansk, to capture it for the reasons I just mentioned a moment ago. It appears that they have not been able to make a lot of progress. Ukrainian defenders have been holding Sinkivka incredibly well, and Orlansky and Yahidne have also been holding. The Russians have not been able to make an advance in these areas. However, the Ukrainians now appear to be trying to conduct counterattacks against the weaker front of the Russian offensive near Yahidne to try and break it up and possibly scare the larger bulk of the offensive near Sinkivka into falling back because one of their flanks will have collapsed. We got to see a little bit of a video of that today near Yahidne, and it was very interesting, very wild, by the way, and we're going to go to it real quick and watch it. So check this out. Here's the clip. We hear the machine gunner firing. We see the rear door opening. The Ukrainian infantrymen hopping out and immediately laying down fire towards the Russians.
Always wild to me how they literally drop off the Ukrainian soldiers right in the middle of like a barren field, like with no cover.
Yeah, and also what's always wild is that they use the APCs not to drop off the soldier several hundred yards away. It's usually just less than 100 yards away from the Russian positions, like maybe 50 yards. So the Ukrainians aren't even fighting these normal kinds of firefights, because in case if y'all do or don't know this, to our veterans, y'all know this, especially if you're in the infantry. If you weren't in the military and in the infantry, you probably wouldn't know, and it doesn't matter. But the average distance of a firefight in most Western doctrines is somewhere around 400 yards, and that's what most rifles are actually designed to reach, is around 400 yards, and a little bit further than that. The M4 is designed to accurately reach about 600 yards. That's really pushing it. So 400 yards is well within its effective firing range. The AK-74 is also designed to get similar ballistics and also fire at a similar range, because most large militaries, Western and not Western, all consider the 400-yard range to be the normal distance that a firefight begins at. And that's usually also one of the average in like the deadliest category. It's kind of average. When you get into a range of 50 yards, you're talking about this is an insane kind of a firefight just from the distance alone. People are not missing at 50 yards. They are hitting you dead on if they are able to pop a shot off at you. There's just no chance that you can miss. Even if you're stressed out with adrenaline pumping, they're so close, there's just no way in hell. These are a very deadly kind of a firefight to undergo, and that's probably why the Ukrainians only do this with armored personnel carrier support. The armored personnel carrier suppresses the Russian infantry, keeping their heads down. They drop off the Ukrainian infantry pretty much point blank onto the position, and then they advance from there. It seems to be a fairly solid tactic for Ukraine. It's almost like a stormtrooper tactic that the Germans would use in the First World War. And it seems to have some pretty good results. I'll show you all in the clip. It has very good results in this clip in its own right. When you see the Ukrainian soldier running and firing wildly to just keep the Russians' heads down and get to his position. And we can see that the one APC we saw in the video is actually joined by a second one, and they're both YPR 765s.
Now tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is the exact scenario where like fighter jets are having a really strong air presence would come in big, like handy, because, you know, instead of dropping off the soldiers and having them run out into an open field where they really don't have much cover, they could just strafe the place and then send the soldiers in, and it'd been a much better advantage at that point to try to take on these Russians.
They could. Really, any kind of fire support would be great in this situation, because the firefight they're having right now, it honestly seems to show that the Ukrainians are emphasizing a strategy where artillery is not used heavily. Probably because they don't have enough shells to use artillery heavily. But the normal way this kind of a firefight would have unfolded if this was a U.S. squad would have been some kind of a forward unit, recon team, or the cavalry scouts would have spotted this Russian position. They would have reported it back to the company or the battalion headquarters. The battalion would then allocate several companies to go out, or maybe just one company, to conduct an assault on this position. And once the armored personnel carriers came within 500 to 600 yards of the position, they would drop off the infantry. The infantry would proceed forward for the next 200 yards until they reached about a 400-yard distance. They would then engage the enemy, and then the squad leaders would start to call in the positions of the Russian forces, and either an American aircraft would come in and start dropping laser-guided bombs in the position, or we would call in some artillery fire to try and keep the Russians' heads down and hopefully just knock them out with suppressive fire alone. That's usually what a U.S. strategy or a U.S. doctrine will look like when engaging these kinds of positions. But the Ukrainian one seems to have any kind of support at all, air or artillery support, completely non-existent. Their idea is, instead of using fire support from artillery or an aircraft, just use the machine gun on the APC as a suppressive fire, and then drop the infantry off at point-blank range to pretty much act as stormtroopers rushing into the Russian position and then wiping them out before they can really react. That seems to be what the Ukrainians are doing in this video, and it's a big change from what a Western doctrine would look like.
Damn, that machine over there is like taking off fast. I heard it revving up.
Dude, that thing went. It's just like, dang. When you see the Ukrainians now getting down to that horrendous trench, and now they're beginning to push through it. And someone's phone's ringing, actually. They're getting a call in the middle of all this. And that's the end of the clip.
I think that was music coming out of a Bluetooth speaker or something.
Dude, he's just vibing. He's just enjoying it, taking in the moment. But still, that is a look at the Ukrainian attack troops that assaulted this trench in this area around Yahidne. And it's a very interesting look at how Ukrainian strategy and doctrine is beginning to unfold as the war keeps going. And especially as artillery shells begin to dwindle in their stocks. The Ukrainians were firing an exorbitant amount of artillery over the summer months, and due to a lack of U.S. support and also a great deal of inaction on the European Union's end as far as acquisition and shipment of artillery shells to Ukraine, we're seeing that they're starting to run into some artillery shell shortages, and this is leading to a change of their offensive doctrine whenever they implement it. And y'all could see that clearly in that video right there. Moving on from that and down towards the direction of Svatove, we also got a pretty interesting video of some Russian forces getting hit by an FPV drone. But many of y'all have been talking about this war and how it's going to last. Because like with the artillery shells running out, there have been some rumors and indications, at least since after Christmas, that the West may be trying to put pressure on Ukraine to end the war, or there may even be negotiations that are quietly going on behind the scenes about how this war may end. A lot of y'all have put in some input on what y'all think about this and these rumors. Do y'all think it's just appeasing the West? Do y'all think the Ukrainians are really considering these options? Or do y'all think the Ukrainians are more so hell-bent on reclaiming their territory? Or are they seriously considering the option of ending the war? A lot of y'all have been asking this question of yourselves. And Matthew's actually asked y'all this question directly. And I would like to ask you, man, what have people been saying about this kind of stuff?
All right, so jumping into our first poll and question segment of the night, we have our one poll to address, and the question says, the U.S. and allies are holding secret meetings with Ukraine on a potential peace plan with Russia, and what are your thoughts? 42% said Ukraine is just appeasing the West, 36% said we don't have enough info just yet, 12% said Ukraine is beginning to consider peace, and 11% said unsure. And on this one, I've been saying for a while that it would not hurt if Ukraine would simply try to appease the West by at least entertaining the peace talks. I'm not encouraging Ukraine to give up land or even take a deal that Russia might propose. but there are ways that they can try to gather intel by simply speaking and negotiating with Russian ambassadors and diplomats that they might not have gotten otherwise. Also, it would keep appeasing U.S. allies to make sure that the West isn't going to get upset that Ukraine might not be looking at all the options that could be, quote unquote, rational by Western standards to keep that aid flowing into Ukraine from the Western leadership. So, in my opinion, I think that Ukraine is probably just appeasing the West, but I don't think it should be necessarily looked down upon or, for anyone to consider Ukraine weak for simply at least considering these meetings and these plans for potential peace. But the odds of a peace plan actually happening, like I've been saying for a while, is slim to none. It's probably less than 1%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I think as well, they're probably just appeasing the West through this. I do not think that they're wanting to end the war anytime soon. It looks like they still have some kind of ambition of reclaiming all of the territory that's been lost to the Russians from 2014 to the present day, and I think they're still going to be working towards that going on forward. There's just not really a lot of indications that they want to end the war. There are indications, however, in the Western world. Many of y'all know that here in America, there is a decent group of people, well, not really decent, I actually say it's a smaller group of people still, that don't really support Ukraine. They're ending up causing a lot of tremors over here and starting to make some of the Ukraine supporters even say that maybe the war should end. Some other people are just, the anti-war people, the ones who watched, what the hell was that movie called? Paths of Glory, and then they became this anti-war little virtue signal or whatever, and so no wars can happen anywhere for any reason, even if it's a justified war of defense. They just want the war to end because, I don't know, they're a hippie or something. I don't really know. But beyond that, I would have to say it doesn't look like the Ukrainians are seriously considering it. Regardless of whether Western countries are starting to have movements to try and end the war just for one reason or another, I don't think the Ukrainians are adamant on ending it. I think they want it to continue because they still see the ability to weaken the Russians and take their territory back. So I would say I'd have to go with the majority of y'all. I think they are probably doing it to appease the West. But the 36% of y'all that said we probably don't have enough info, y'all are probably right too, because there's usually a lack of info when it comes to things that are just written down. We don't have video and picture evidence about. We kind of hear a little, there's like a little wafting of information that comes in every once in a while, and then we get nothing for a long time. So that might also be true as well. But with that, we are on to the next one if we have another one.
All right, so that was our only poll question to address for now. So with that, we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a $20 donation from Robert Nicholson as well as BC Skyman. They did not leave comments, though, sadly, but Robert and BC are definitely longtime channel legends, and we appreciate, while I'm doing a Mike Tyson impression there, appreciate. But anyways, thank you very much, Robert and BC, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank both of y'all, Robert and BC Skyman, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but y'all's support does make it possible for us to keep the gears grinding on this channel day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, and to continue to cover the news of this war. It's incredible to see folks always supporting the fundraisers, but one thing I also have to say is that y'all support us to help us stay on air as well through the Super Chats. Of course, all donations go to the nonprofits because YouTube gives, so, they manage the account and do everything that way. But we got to thank everyone who always pays attention to this channel and helps to support it as well, because y'all make it possible for us to be on air covering this news tonight that many of y'all are enjoying. 4,600 of y'all are on air right now. I don't know why I said that twice, but 4,600 of y'all are on here right now enjoying this news. And I got to thank those of y'all who help to support this channel and help it to keep running, because you're making it possible for 4,600 people to be here right now, live on air, watching the news going on in the war. And it means a great deal to us, because this has been pretty much my entire life for the past 2 years, and thanks to y'all's support, y'all are helping it to be possible for at least another day here on this channel. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well to the both of you, BC Skyman and Robert Nicholson, both channel legends. And if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
His name is not Robert Nixon, or otherwise he'd be saying, "I am not a crook." But anyways, anyway, that's just a joke, by the way. Don't want to invoke politics or anything. Get anybody riled up, because I know someone's going to get riled up in a minute. But anyways, moving on to our next Super Chat question, we have one from Panama Floyd, who throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, as always, for that support. He says, YouTube is acting up. I couldn't send the message I wanted, and I don't know why they wanted me to edit the Super Chat. It let me post it without donating, and here's for the pizza fund.
And thank you so much, Panama Floyd. Floyd of Panama. Two chairs. And I gotta thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And I'll tell you, it may not be YouTube acting up. YouTube actually has censors, and we've actually been censored before when we were covering things going on in the Middle East. So far, and also some people are wondering, when are we going to start doing that again? I am watching that daily. Do not be mistaken. I am watching that conflict daily at this point and trying to see if there's ever enough video and picture evidence for us to put that back on air. So far, it's kind of just dropped off. There's not a lot of video or picture evidence coming out about it. It's more so just kind of a simmering conflict at this point inside of the strip. So we're going to be waiting, hopefully it's not hopefully in that way. You know, if y'all want to hear the news, though, I guess it's hopefully, but we'll probably get enough news at some point to include it as a news segment again. But for the near future, it does not look like that's going to be the case. It's just kind of a one and done thing every day here and there, and there's just not enough to show to make it a news segment. But beyond that, I do thank you once again for bringing that up, because that's why we are kind of a little miffed with YouTube. Kind of not. And we're very lucky that folks like you, Panama, support the channel, because otherwise we would really be tied into what YouTube wants us to say and not say. Much like they kind of censor what you can say in a super chat and what we can say on our stream or in our title or in our description, YouTube is also able to do that with AdSense. And that's how a lot of people on YouTube are able to make a living, is through ads. So when they turn on the ads, and that's their source of income, they have to greatly curtail what they say to really appease YouTube. We don't really have to do that much on this channel, because y'all just support the channel and y'all make it possible for us to say whatever we want and what y'all like to hear. And so I gotta thank you so much for supporting the channel again, Panama Floyd. And let's make sure to have a pizza and enjoy the good moment of having a nice, delicious pizza. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again, Panama, for the support. I hope that does address that well. And
and also, Enforcer, before we move on from that, because that was actually our last super chat to address, I see a boatload of people demanding, they're not just asking, they're demanding to see the marmot. They want the marmot and they want it now. And I think we should give it to them.
Well, we can't deny a guest even the most ridiculous request. We must get a marmot. So hello there. Would you like a plum?
There he is.
Hello there. Could I interest you in a plum? 5 pence, or I'm not gonna make that joke. It might offend the British viewers, but anyways.
Hello there. Would you like a plum?
You know, something you've never considered, though, is this marmot could be very proper. Like, well, why would you want a plum if you could have this rock that I'm standing on? Would you like to buy this rock?
No, dude, this thing is not proper, man. Look at the eyes and look at the teeth, man. This guy is a football hooligan, right? He's up there in the stands going, "Come on, England! Boom, boom! He scores some freaking goals!"
What's that? That like area or accent of like Brits that are like that? Is that the Cockney accent?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I remembered that, but it rang a bell for some reason.
Oh man. Oh, but anyways, 1 second. I'm gonna take this off screen, because while we make fun of that stupid picture of that marmot, there's actually something really interesting to show y'all about marmots. They're cute.
Man, you're gonna give a fun fact about marmots in the middle of that? What?
No. I'm not gonna give a fact.
This is Rabbit Hole Central.
No. Wait, you're gonna like this. It's a marmot getting a bath.
Are you sure it's a marmot?
Yes, this is a marmot.
Huh, that looks a lot different than the picture.
I know, right? Like, the picture isn't even of a freaking marmot. It's just like some rodent.
This thing looks like it would be sophisticated. Like, could I sell you the rock, good sir? Or he could sell you a stock or something. Would you like to buy a penny stock?
Yes, me and my beautiful wife Camilla do enjoy baths like this.
But dude, they're really cute, actually, and I think they're what we call in America groundhogs, actually. The marmot.
Yeah, I was about to say this is a groundhog. I thought.
But look at that thing, man. That's cute. It's a cute little thing. But beyond that,
I don't know why, because it looks cute, but for some reason it seems like it could go off at any moment, like it lose its temper or something and bite the hell out of something. It looks like it's right on the edge of just losing its crap.
Dude, it goes from I'm very sophisticated to Oh, no. Would you like to lose a leg?
Man, this is the Gopher's unfortunate cousin.
Dude, this is his uncle. This is his uncle who nobody
They said-
lets in the room alone.
The real marmot said, "That's Larry. We don't talk to him." I said, "Hello there."
Oh, no. Do you have any copper in your wires? But anyways, we gotta move on from the marmot. But I love the marmot. I love the marmot. Y'all all know it. I love the marmot. But we gotta move on to the next bit of news down near Svatove, where we got to see a Russian soldier getting hit by an FPV drone. Ooh, that sounds like copyright infringement, and that's why we're muting it. But we can see the drone flying on in, right into the back of that Ural. Oh, I know that. Would you like a
Hey.
drone? Ooh, that's rough.
Also, by the way, apparently that gopher or groundhog or whatever that was, apparently is a very famous character that everybody has a name for it, but I can't pronounce it.
What? Where's the
It's
name?
something Phil.
Hang on, I'm trying to find it. Who said that? Who said that?
It was Danny Stout. He said it's something Phil.
Let's see here. Let's see here. Dang, man, I can't find it.
I can try to pronounce it, but I'm not going to try because that could go south. So let me copy and paste this. There. Now I sent it in the chat.
All right, and we're waiting for it to pop up. I'm not gonna try that either. I'm not gonna try that either, man. Like I was like, it can't be that difficult to pronounce, and now I see it is difficult to pronounce. But nice to see that little truck getting knocked out by the FPV drone. And we're now going to be moving a little bit further down the lines and towards Verkno-Kamyanka, the beautiful oil refinery that has been the source of many interesting videos from the K2 unit. But not only that, we got to see a Russian throwing a shovel at an FPV drone, and somehow he ended up digging his grave that way. Check it out. You see the drone circling around, going for the Russian. There went the shovel, and there goes the drone. Oh, blitz! It's a drone, blitz! Look at him. He's like, oh, no, no, no. Wait. No, 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 no. And he threw the shovel.
He chucked his gun at it?
No, he chucked the shovel. He chucked the freaking shovel.
Damn, that didn't work out.
It did not work out. I guess you could say.
Is that a gas line right above his head?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. It could end up a lot worse than it did.
Strategy 101. Dig your trench. It's right under a gas line. Sure, nothing could go bad there. But moving on from that and into our next little clip, we also got to see another T-64BV. This one's a part of the 30th Independent Mechanized Brigade, which is in this area of the front. And we got to see a couple of pictures of their T-72. Pretty cool. Well, actually, it's T-64. But anyways, moving on from that, it's time for us to move all the way down and towards Klishkivka, because we got some archival footage to show y'all. Some of that stuff that we just have to show y'all, because we know y'all will enjoy it greatly. And we found a video that came from November. No one's ever seen it before, but it's of two Russian BMPs exploding in the fields near Klishkivka. And we see them rolling right there. There goes the first one. And here comes the second one. Actually, that one did a U-turn and then ran right over mine. Dude, look at it. The first one blew up. And they went, bro, I'm going home, man. F this. Then...
A little bit of speed that always tries to save you.
And then now the Russians are like, abandoned ship. I like it. I mean, I like it. Dude, I love how they sped up the footage. So that way it looked like a Wallace and Gromit clip of this thing turning around and blowing up.
Damn. Oh my gosh, that editing was hilarious.
Oh man, Gromit? Did that ground just speak the clicking? You know, but anyways, moving on from that. That was a bad joke. We're now moving on down into the area of Ozrenivka, where we got to see a failed Russian drone. The thing looks like it's made of garbage, but what's most interesting about it is the giant 500, the RBK 500 cluster bomb that was strapped to it. That appears to have not worked. But you see a Ukrainian soldier pointing most likely to the point of failure, which is the entire drone. and it looks like it didn't make it to his target. Very successful for the Ukrainians that it didn't make it. Very unsuccessful for the Russians. The Russians will go hungry. But still, moving on from that, which is very interesting to see, we're now going to be moving on a little bit further down the line and into the area around Avdiivka. Because we get to see today that Russian evacs have been destroyed. Apparently the Russians are complaining about this a lot because they're down to civilian cars at this point in this area. And it looks like a lot of them ended up dying. Very exorbitantly. Oh, look, it's a Avdiivka. That also got blown up as well. But that's kind of a side note. Really, it's all about the ladas at this point. A toasty lada Neva. Delicious. But moving on from that little clip and on into our next one near the area of Kamyanka, we also got to see that a toss blew up today near the area. We can see the toss out there venting fumes. Oh, and it's toasting quite nicely. Oh, incredulous.
Oh.
Oh.
There went a bit flying off of it.
That looks like a wheel. It's rolling away.
They might need that.
Oh! I think they're going to need many
A little
things.
bit of that Bing Schling fireworks inside the cabin, apparently.
Bing chilling.
Wow, that left a hell of a smoke cloud.
I would agree. Quite so indeed. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there, and we're going to be moving on from that and on into our next bit of news. Because that was impressive and all, but down on the southern side, we got to see that the Ukrainians talked to a sniper from the 110th Brigade, which is at work in the area of Yahidne.
Спочатку ще в 16-му році я підписав контракт з 25-ю окремою повітряно-десантною бригадою і служив там в роті снайперів. Потім з початком війни і з першого дня в бригаді у нас була створена тут мобільна група. Командир запропонував, хто хоче вчитися на марксмена, це влучний стрілець. Виявив бажання і таким чином попало до мене в руки спочатку ЮАР-10М. Така гвинтівка 308 калібру. Так як до цього вже мав досвід роботи з 308 калібром, запропонували 338 калібр Рюгер. Це була моя мрія ще з давніх.
338 Lapua. Hey, that's not bad. But apparently you only got the 308, which still is great, by the way, but, you know, anyways.
Часів, і тому я згодився. Це Рюгер 338 калібру був подарований нам волонтерами. Це доволі таки великого калібру гвинтівка. Недорого коштує, це в своєму сегменті. В такому сегменті взагалі гвинтівки коштують в районі 5-6 тисяч доларів. Ця гвинтівка, при тому, що вона не поступається взагалі своїми технічними характеристиками, своєю надійністю, вона коштує в 2 рази дешевше, тобто за 3 тисячі доларів. З цієї гвинтівки можна вести влучний вогонь на 80% попадання з першого пострілу, це 4 з 5 цілей на 1200 метрів. Скажімо так, наші тепловізори, те, що у нас є, вони взагалі не під ці дистанції, вони теж були куплені волонтерами, але вони що не тримають ці 338 калібр, що не здатні, скажімо так, виявляти цілі на таких дистанціях. Потрібен нам, скажімо так, тепловізор, який буде держати і калібр цей, це більше ніж 1000 доларів. Буде, скажімо так, долати ті дистанції, які нам потрібні. Ну, наша робоча дистанція – це ось 1200 метрів. Це вже дуже гарний результат, я ще раз таки кажу, але це потрібні для того, щоб постійно вести вогонь на такій дистанції, потрібна відповідна техніка. Тобто гвинтівка це дозволяє робити, снайпер це може робити, але потрібна гарна оптика. Ну, такий калібр, якщо на 300 метрах попадає в ціль, то отак от розлітається повністю і підари, магазини і все. Це дуже така важка і серйозна куля. Це вже вважається великокаліберна гвинтівка. Тому що це дуже складна професія. Це одна з найскладніших професій. І тому для того, щоб це було ефективно і, як ви кажете, романтично, то має бути гідна підготовка, мають фахівці передавати свій досвід. Враховуючи те, що в нас є фахівці з дуже великим досвідом, які працюють з 2014 року. І я думаю, що від цього дуже залежить результат. А так, це мрія, яка здійснилась в мене, і ось ми намагаємось максимально, скажімо так, цю мрію реалізувати так, як бачимо це ми. Тому ось стараємось щось і шукаємо, купляємо, щоб бути максимально ефективними. Тому що снайпер – це не тільки постріл, це ще й твоє спорядження і твоя підготовка, твоє маскування – це дуже складна професія. Складність в тому, що тобі потрібно визначити свою позицію, визначити запасну позицію. Тобто ти максимум можеш робити до 3 пострілів з одної позиції. Був такий дуже гарний снайпер в одному з підрозділів ССО, який загинув через те, що просто не змінив свою позицію. Постріл ти робиш там в 10% случаїв. Да? Весь інший час ти спостерігаєш. Тобі треба замаскуватись правильно вийти на позицію, правильно потім змінити свою позицію, якщо ти зробив постріл. І саме головне, тобі правильно потім відійти, так, щоб вас не спалили. Дистанції це, ну, скажімо, 200 км – це не дуже велика дистанція, така, що прям тебе не видно. Якщо тебе підари спалять, то вони туди насиплять все вплоть до ракет можуть. Тобто, вони не пожаліють на снайпера нічого. Це людина, яка робить їм дуже велику шкоду. Це людина, який постріл, він, скажімо так, наверняка. Тому вони нас дуже не люблять. Є деякі, скажімо так, риси характеру, які мають бути присутні людині. Тобто і спокійність – це одна з тих рис характеру, яка має бути в снайпера. Ми стараємось просто так робити, щоб це було по 3 години. Ми стараємось один одного міняти. Тобто ми взаємозаміняємо, і тому через 3 години в тебе вже ти не зможеш так точно спостерігати, тобто в тебе вже концентрація уваги там втрачається, і тому стараємось робити все максимально під себе комфортно. Прям догми такої нема, це все нарабатується з досвідом. І кожен, як казав мій учитель, ти можеш робити неправильно, але маєш робити це постійно неправильно, щоб влучати. Максимально потрібно все робити однаково. Снайпер вчиться все життя. Тобто, ти не можеш стати прям якимсь досконалим. Ти постійно вчишся. Спалитись можна по-різному. І знову ж таки, на кілометрі 200 то рух дуже гарно помітний. Це я ще раз кажу, це не така дистанція супер якась дуже велика, що ти там можеш собі спокійно в повний рост гуляти. Це дуже би хотілося б отримати чий-так 375-го калібру. Вони зараз «Повернись живим», в них є проєкт спільно з Ібіцом. Вони створили нову гвинтівку, вона, скажімо так, на українській базі, але з комплектуючими з кращих компаній всього світу. І це, ще раз же кажу, чий-так 375-го калібру, гвинтівка, яка зможе підвищити, скажімо так, підвищити дальність роботи на 400 метрів. Це, тобі ж, знову ж таки, 4 із 5 цілей з першого пострілу будуть вражатися на 1600 метрів. Але взагалі з неї можна...
This guy's a sniper, right?
Yeah, yes.
I'm kind of like surprised because, I'm not knocking Ruger or anything like that, but these Rugers, I believe, are pretty common. And I'm not saying that they're not accurate, but there seems like there might be better options out there if you're going to equip a sniper that's actually fighting a war, like for survival of the country. Like, kind of an interesting choice. I've never seen a Ukrainian sniper use one of these.
You know what? I want to actually find out what kind of a rifle this is. Let's see here. Looks like, if I could find one here that would match what this looks like, it looks like it would probably be, yep, it is a Ruger precision rifle. And I've actually heard some pretty good things about these Ruger precision rifles. I was actually looking at them a while ago, apparently they can shoot a sub-MOA grouping right out of the box, which means that they have a less than 1-inch dispersion. You know, if you fire this thing perfectly each time, at 100 yards, all of the rounds are going to fall in an area less than 1 inch apart from each other. So very, very accurate for what it is, considering that these things, I think, are only like $2,000. You know, and when you think about that, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me personally, I mean, I would go with the classics. But I mean, if you're looking for one, like the only thing is Ukraine's really not on the budget because they're getting a lot of aid. So it's like if you can buy the better ones, why wouldn't you equip all your snipers with the better ones? Because I've seen a lot of their snipers with much more higher end weapons that probably have better like endurance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I suppose. But still, you know, I don't want to knock it. It doesn't look that bad. It's not terrible. But still, I do see what you're saying. Of course. But with that, let's get back to this video because we don't have much left.
Працювати до 2,5 кілометрів. То це така дуже, дуже крута річ, про яку ми майже кожен день розмовляємо, щоб якось таку от гвинтівку нам би отримати. Тобто, от, чи і так 375 це прям от мрія. Ну, як крузак. Я би на Land Cruiser 200 би його возив би в багажнику. Зброя раніше була, в рицарів своя зброя, у кожного свій меч там, да? І десь отак от себе зрівнюєш просто з своїми пращурами. І от я теж так задумувався. Цікаво, це яка булава така була в мого якогось пращура, типа як в мене 338 Рюгер. Тому ставимося як до члена родини.
So with that, that's the end of that clip, but a really interesting insight into the world of a Ukrainian sniper, especially one who has been serving in the area of Avdiivka, and talking about his craft. And we all know this craft is pretty damn nifty. It's like macaroni and cheese. Good craft. But moving on from that and down the lines from Avdiivka, because not really a lot happened frontline-wise there, we're now moving to Marinka, where we got to see a Ukrainian soldier get a very near miss from a Russian RPG. Right there. Very lucky that it did not get him. And he's off. But still, a pretty wild near miss. Moving on from that little bit of news and a little bit further on down the line towards Solodki, we also got to see Russian forces getting hit by artillery. Boing, boing. But we can see a Chulpan down there being carried by a Kamaz, and now it got hit. And we can see the truck burning up. We can now see a actual 2S4 Chulpan, and it also got hit. And we can see it blowing up. And we see the vehicle getting hit and blowing up in the very nice fashion. Destruction. Boom, jagga, jagga, boom, jagga, jagga.
Boof.
And we see the vehicle continue to explode and burn down there. And I mean, those Russians, they're toasting.
You know smoked salmon, the like classic Norwegian smoked salmon.
Yes?
Well, that's basically what the Russians are at this point.
Man, I see what you're saying.
Man,
they're like
yeah, that was so sly, man. You didn't see that one coming.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, man. And
But anyways, they are getting smoked. That was the punchline. They're getting smoked.
Well, I mean, it's the awkward side of it. But that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see the artillery doing its job. Moving on from that and towards the area of Preshitivka or whatever, we can see an M109 firing off its main gun. Look at this. It destroys a 120mm mortar. Look at this M109. They're reloading it. You can see them getting ready to fire and firing. The bush.
They pull the string, blood. We got all the technology, but pull the string.
Yank that cord, boy. But we can see them hitting the mortar dead on with the first shot. We see their M109 firing again. A double tap is what they call this. And there we go, double tap. Robota Sao M109. Very cool. Oh, that mortar's gone. It's the base plate's all that's left. Rest in pieces, Blade. And that's the end of that clip. But very nice to see. I love to see it. Moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, down into the area of Fedorivka, we got to see the results of a Ukrainian missile strike. The Russians said that nobody got killed in this attack. You know, whether you want to believe them or not, that's up to you. But we got to see that the base took a pretty good hit, a pretty chunky hit. Looks like everybody ended up having a slightly worse day. And this engine block here is telling me that one vehicle had a really bad day. But moving on from...
They went from zil to nil.
Man, rip. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next bit of news up near Andrivka or Nechayevka. We got to see the Ukrainians training with some new tank. You know what? This is a duplicate. I showed you all pictures of this before. Sorry about that. Moving on from that, it is now time for us to get down to the real action. This is the stuff that was in the title and the thumbnail. The Russian attack that got destroyed today. It was a very impressive one, and it was very nice. I will show it to you. The Russian tanks getting blown up in Krynky. The Russians tried to attack a Krynky today. The honey badger went and blew both of them up. So here's the clip. Alright, we're muting that, but we can see the tanks. And we can see the drone blade. And we're about to see one of these tanks blow up. And here it comes in a minute now.
Oh, and it went nuclear.
I have never seen a tank explode like that. Literal chunks of it are flying across the field. My God.
That's why you don't mess with a badger on cocaine. This is what happens.
That's the end of that clip. And that was a little look at the Russian attack on the northern end of Krynky today. It blew up literally. And that's why we put in the thumbnail huge explosions, because I'm not kidding. It was literally like a nuclear level explosion. Moving on from that, though, we saw that more Ukrainian forces were crossing the river, probably to help out with what was going on the other side of the river today, but it looks like the Ukrainians had it well in hand. So I'm pretty happy to see that. Moving on from that little bit of news, and a little bit further south towards the Zelenskyy sands, we also got to see that the Russians lost a toss. Okay, interesting choice of music. I don't know if I like that music or that music that goes, you know, the one that everyone's played for 1 or 2 straight years at this point, or you know, or that one, you know, there's just so many of them that they played so many times, and it drives me freaking crazy. But anyways, we can see the toss right down there. It's about to get hit. Someone call 911 because this is a battery.
I hate to break it to you, though. Unfortunately, we've seen this one before.
We have?
We definitely have, without a doubt.
What? You know what?
I remember this one like it was just yesterday. I thought I was going crazy, but I think we've seen it.
I'll trust you on that one. But we did get to see some Russian supply trucks getting destroyed. This I know is new. Like, Zoing Scoop, I don't think we hit well enough. Raggy. It's check cover.
Raggy, this is the end. Let me have a snack. I'll take one of those dog bones, Scooby snacks.
Man, I tell you what, man. I'm just praying the Lee Spring Army can hold in, because the Lee Spring Army never dies, you know what I mean? But we can see the next drone coming on in. And hitting the back of that Scooby-Doo then.
Scooby ain't getting no breaks. It's a hard night life. He's finding out.
Like, Zoing Scoop, the real world's terrifying. Ruh-roh-racky. And we see they're going for all the Scooby-Doo vans. I mean, every Scooby-Doo is not safe in this place.
You know the name on the top of the drone is Rarog. I was like, Ro Raggy, Rarog.
Raggy. Oh man, and what an outro! What an outro!
Dang.
Oh man, and with that, that's the end of the clip right there. But very nice to see that the Rarog unit was able to take out those impressive Russian Scooby-Doo vans. What a day! What a day! And y'all know, it's time for us to move on up into the area of Kyiv. We have to cover the news of what's going on with the President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 685 of the war. We're only 15 days away from the 700th day of the war. So let me bring y'all here to this peach, and let me get it up here to y'all, and let me get it in Ukrainian. And without further ado, here is the peach.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Перша ставка. Сьогодні було особливе засідання за прямої очної участі усіх основних командувачів та керівників операцій. Разом з Головкомом, Генштабом, Міноборони, Мінстратегпромом, Мінцифри детально проаналізували забезпечення снарядами і дронами, розподіл між бригадами та підрозділами, щоденні потреби, фактичні витрати. Головне, уся логістика має стати швидшою. Проговорили також відкриття нових ліній виробництва зброї та боєприпасів в Україні, на наших підприємствах та разом з партнерами. Звичайно, розглянули постачання, яке очікуємо цьогоріч. Попри усю наявну проблематику у світі, наш акуратний, чіткий підхід до кожної потреби, до кожної можливості здатен забезпечити сили оборони усім необхідним. Ми бачимо, як реалізувати українські пріоритети цього року, що для цього потрібно, хто для цього потрібен та які сигнали можуть спрацювати. Окремо і детально проаналізували роботу наших повітряних сил, усіх наших захисників неба, результати збиття російських ракет і дронів, те, що вдалося, те, що має вдатися. Продовжуємо працювати із усіма партнерами, щоб посилити нашу ППО і одночасно, щоб посилити тиск на Росію. Санкції світу, безумовно, працюють. І працюють непогано. Є чіткі свідчення гальмування російської оборонки. Але щоб результат санкцій був 100%, так само на 100% мають бути перекриті і схеми обходу санкцій. А також потрібні нові глобальні кроки проти тих, хто продовжує допомагати Росії. Кожен у світі знає цей невеликий перелік спільників тероризму. Будемо говорити щодо цього з партнерами додатково. Сьогодні провів вже 3 телефонні розмови з лідерами: президент Румунії, президент Польщі, прем'єр-міністр Бельгії. Я подякував Румунії за той рівень співпраці, який вже досягнутий. Ми маємо надзвичайно хороші результати і в Дунайському регіоні, і в Чорноморській співпраці, і загалом у взаємодії між нами. Цінуємо підтримку Румунією нашого руху в Євросоюз. Точно маємо потенціал, щоб збільшити транскордонну взаємодію і в тому числі у трикутнику Україна, Румунія, Молдова. Обговорили з президентом Йоханнісом сьогодні деякі перспективні питання щодо оборони, те, як можемо разом зміцнити позиції. Зокрема, обговорили підготовку наших пілотів F-16. Хороша розмова була з президентом Польщі. Я вдячний Польщі за незмінну допомогу Україні в питаннях про наш вступ в Євросоюз. Щоб не відбувалось, стратегічно ми працюємо все ж разом в Європі. І сьогодні обговорили, зокрема, нашу взаємодію в питаннях роботи з НАТО. Україна має стати членом Альянсу. Поінформував президента Дуду щодо ситуації на фронті, а також про триваючі російські удари і наш захист, наші потреби. Зокрема, потреб у підтримці. Я ціную слова президента Дуди про єдність, яка нам так необхідна. Важлива розмова із головою уряду Бельгії. Зараз Бельгія розпочала своє головування в Раді Євросоюзу. І я вдячний за те, що підтримка України та міжнародного права є одним із пріоритетів бельгійського головування. Ми разом з Бельгією досягли деяких дійсно проривних речей, зокрема щодо використання російських активів для підтримки України. І це один з тих прикладів, коли бельгійське лідерство має глобальне значення. Я вдячний і за підтримку санкцій проти Росії, а також за чітку підтримку нашої євроінтеграції. За цей рік ми можемо значно просунутись і в питанні щодо переговорів про вступ з Україною, і в питанні щодо більш рішучого ставлення світу до російських активів. Агресор повинен платити за те, що він накоїв, і це справедливо. Звичайно, з усіма лідерами говорив і про нашу роботу щодо формули миру. Вже скоро зустріч радників у Давосі. Працюємо, щоб вона була і достатньо представницькою, змістовною також. Це нам вдається, і я дякую усім, хто допомагає. Слава усім, хто працює заради свободи, усім, хто воює заради свободи, хто робить усе, щоб свобода ставала міцніше, і щоб терор, саме терор, програвав. Кожен тиждень менше можливостей для Росії. Кожен тиждень більше можливостей для України. Слава Україні!
And
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 685 of the war. And we're about to be moving on into the second part of the stream, where we get to talk to all for about the next 30 minutes or so. But I want to remind y'all really quickly that I want to thank each and every one of y'all who support the channel greatly for doing so. Of course, much like Ukraine constantly needs support to be able to continue fighting this war, the channel always relies on viewer support to make sure that we're able to keep running. And so I got to thank everyone who supports the channel, because you make it possible for us to be on air every night covering this news. But with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving on to our final poll and question segment, we have one poll to address, and the question says, Kim Jong-un says he has no intention of avoiding war and calls South Korea the enemy. What a shocker. And what are your thoughts? 67% said it's the usual tough talk by Kim, 23% said war is inevitable, 6% said war is not inevitable, and 4% said unsure. And a few days ago, if you'd asked me this question, I would have said that maybe war was inevitable, because it looked like Kim Jong-un was going to try to fast-track his way to destruction by starting World War III with South Korea. And then that would have gone from there. But now, today, I would honestly say that it sounds like Kim might be reverting back to just his tough talk, which is better than starting a war for certain. But I don't think that it's inevitable at this point. It looks like maybe things are dying back down, and he got really out of control there for a second. But it looks like he's reining himself back in, or someone else is that's around him. So that's good news, but obviously Kim Jong's going to keep running his mouth. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, of course, the area is going to be, a little on pins and needles here recently. But nevertheless, I think it's better than what we were seeing. I mean, we thought for a while they were actually going into full-on war, but at the same time, it looks like they may not be, so that's lucky. Of course, the whole thing of him saying they're never not at war, that's just Korean rhetoric, and it looks like the little rocket man is up to his old thing. It's not going to be anything shocking, but hopefully nothing comes out of it this time. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And with that, we are out of poll questions. So we're moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a $20 donation from Darren Silvers. And thank you very much, Darren, for that support. He says, I figured it out. Trusting just one of you would have a clinical copay for penicillin the morning after Chris's mom. Jeez.
Whoa.
LSA. And first Super Chat.
Oh my lord. Oh my lord. Well, I'd have to thank you for the support. And also, goodness gracious, Darren, that is something else. I gotta tell you right there. Chris's mom is getting it tonight. And apparently she did get it, because apparently the penicillin's out. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the show to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And I gotta thank you so much, Darren, for your first time supporting the channel. Support seems to be dropping more and more on the channel, and it's getting a little concerning, because at this point, just being completely honest, we're having to wonder how much longer the channel can last with support being like this. But I got to thank folks like you, Darren, for supporting the channel, because you're helping us to keep it running for as long as we possibly can. And we got to thank folks like you who not only support Ukraine, but also support this channel, because like I always say, without the viewers, this channel is not able to exist. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one. And I love the joke. That was a pretty good one.
Indeed, it definitely got me off guard for certain. But anyways, the next one goes to Rick Hollander, who puts in an 11 and says, "Good evening, guys, and all good." And yes, we are, Rick, and thank you very much for asking. He says, "Last time we rabbit holed to Lego, I wonder what Klazinavine brings to mind. And keep up the great work, and thank you."
And thank you so much for the support. And to answer your question, let's see here. Hang on, Matthew. Can you tell me which one it was again? Because I want to make sure to find it.
It's Rick Hollander, and also I'm putting this word into Google, by the way, to figure out what this is. It's a town in the Netherlands. That's what it is.
Rick Hollander. Okay, there we go. I was just making sure I had the right one because I was looking through the list. Let's see. Good evening, guys. All good? Everything's pretty good. I mean, we're managing law school, and we're managing this on top of it, and I'm also managing other things in the background. But beyond that, things are going really good. So thank you for asking. I hope things are going good on your end as well. And also, let's see. I wonder what Klausanav. We'll pull that up here in a minute. But speaking of Lego, you know what? We'll pull that up right now. Let's see. Here we go. Let's go check this place out. So, what do we have here? We have Klausanaven. It looks. Where is this again?
This is the Netherlands.
Huh.
Allegedly.
For some reason, I have a feeling that this bridge has some kind of historical significance. We'll circle back to that. But let's see here. I'm looking. It's a square town, I will admit. A little Lego-y. But oddly enough, for some reason, it almost seems to me in the pictures here on the side, it's almost like a small American town for some reason. It's very interesting. Let's go over here. Let's X out of that. So here it is. Where is this in the Netherlands? This is right on the German border in the north near Bremen. So we're literally right here. There's Germany. You cross over and you go into Germany right there. So that's pretty wild. So let's go over here. Let's check out Klausanaven. And let me drop down here. Let's see what it looks like here. Okay, now this is Lego. That is Lego right there. This whole street, nothing but Lego. And I gotta say, I like it. Very nice. Very nice. And Van Bruggen. But nevertheless, thank you so much for the support. I'm guessing, Rick, you must be from Klausanaven, but nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support. It looks a lot like Lego on the street. Not in the pictures, though. But thank you so much once again for supporting the channel and helping us keep this thing running. And thank you for enjoying the work we put in, because we try and put in our maximum effort to get the news out to all of y'all each and every night. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to John Garner and also Gilly Flower, who each puts in a $10 donation. And they said, thanks, Matt, and to you too, Enforcer. And thank you both, John and Gilly, for that support.
Hey! And thank you so much to both of y'all for the support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but y'all's support means a lot and helps us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so thank you to both of y'all so much once again, because you're helping us to remain on air. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AK Smithy, who puts in a 10. And thank you, good sir, for that support. He says, hey guys, China might have more ships, but the U.S. has twice the tonnage.
And I would say, AK Smithy, I like the name, that is pretty true. The U.S. does have twice the tonnage. And not only that, we have much better ships than the Chinese do. Almost half of the Chinese Navy is motor torpedo boats, which are coastal vessels, meaning that really, in practice, the Chinese really only have half of the U.S. Navy in real size. there's not really a lot. In fact, I don't think there's much of the U.S. Navy at all that is coastal fleet. That's more so for the Coast Guard. The U.S. Navy is an actual blue water fleet, one that can travel around the world. And so the Chinese still are not on that level, no doubt about it. But I got to thank you so much for the support, AK Smithy, because that's a very important thing to point out with the Chinese, is that they're more so of a paper tiger in many ways, including the Navy. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping us to make this possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chris Chaturis, Fight the Good Fight, he says, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Chris, for that support. He says, LSA, stay the course. Victory is with Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. And he says he loves smoking a joint, getting the daily updates on how well the fight's going, and stay strong. Stay moving forward.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping the channel to keep running. And of course, the Lee Spring Army will stay the course. As long as we are able to keep this channel running, we are going to keep covering the news until the war ends. Of course, support like yours helps to make that possible, and I've got to thank everyone who does support us. The only way we're able to keep the channel running is the only way it's possible. And I got to thank folks like you for looking out for the channel and supporting it, because y'all help to make it possible. And also, thank you for enjoying the daily updates. It means a lot to us that people do love to get on here daily and listen to the updates. And I got to thank you so much for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. We wouldn't be able to do this every day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
In the next one is a big shout out to Robert Johnson, who put in a $10 donation. And thank you, good sir Robert, for putting in that support and helping to keep the whole operation afloat and running. And we appreciate it very much. And the next one goes to Still Thinking, who puts in a 10 as well, and says, hello, Andrew and Matt. And hello, Still Thinking.
Hello.
They said, I always look forward to the stream, and have there been any pictures of Pootlers emptying vehicle storage locations? LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And sadly, we haven't seen any videos, and we haven't really gotten a lot of satellite pictures lately either of the storage depots in the Far East being emptied out like they were at the beginning of the war. I don't know why we're not getting that data anymore, but no one is putting it out there for us to see. But nevertheless, I got to thank you for the support. I got to thank you for enjoying the channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to be on air to even try and answer a very good question like that. And I've got to thank everyone who does support the channel, kind of pushing that a little tonight, because it's a little, like I don't want to say this because it sounds weird, but it's starting to become a little bit of a concern on our end, as far as support goes to the channel, because a lot of people support the fundraisers, but not that many people support the channel. And so we were trying to figure out how are we going to keep this thing running for a while, but support like yours does help that question to be a lot easier to answer. And I got to thank you for being one of the folks who's supporting the channel and helping to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ed, who puts in a 10. And thank you, good sir Ed, for that support. This is Irish Ed, he says.
Hey!
And some advice for the future. If either of you decide that law is not for you, he says, I really think you would be much happier as a military history professor or a museum of history of your choosing. And Irish Ed gave the enforcer an escape option, but he didn't give me one, so I better stick with the law.
Well, I got to thank you so much for the support, Irish Ed, and I got to thank you for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And also, I think I'm going to probably stick with the law. I was a little questioning it there as to what I would do, whether I would do law or whether I would do this full-time or anything for that matter. And I would love to do something like that. That would be fun. But sadly, I don't think I would actually want to do something like that, because working in museums sounds fun until you actually are in a museum, and then nobody ever shows up unless it's like a school field trip for some local school, and then you're just like in there all the time doing nothing. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Ed. And thank you for giving me some fallback options, because I'll consider them. And if things get really, really rough, that's an option. That's an option. But still, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who also puts in a 5. And thank you very much for that support, good sir. And he says, I made a Ukraine war version of the American song, quote-unquote, Battle Cry of Freedom, and posted it in the Discord. And I think you guys will like it in Slava Ukraine.
Hey! Hey, thank you so much for the support, and really cool to hear. I'm gonna try and check that out. Because I really do like that song. It's a good one from the U.S. Civil War. And also, I will make sure to take a good look. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to be possible. And I will try and check that out after the stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And dang, up next, we have a massive $100 donation from the Activista. This is the Activista that's been here for ages. He's a fixture of the channel, just like BC Skyman and the other channel legends. And thank you very much, Activista, for that very generous support. And sadly, no comment to address, but his super chat came in like a red alert. It's in bright red. Thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the massive amount of support, Activista, in keeping the channel in mind. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is helping us to keep this thing running. And I got to thank you for that because, you know, I'm not wanting to touch on this a lot tonight, but it's something that, you know, we've not really said a lot on stream, but every once in a while we're looking and we're going, you know, it's dropping. And what I'm talking about is support to the channel. Over the past 5 months or so, viewer support has been kind of on a downward trend. And it went from where, you know, we could run the channel and everything would be fine to at this point, we're like, man, it's like continuing to drop, and we don't know, you know, if it's going to keep on dropping. And if it does, how much longer could we keep the channel running? And while we always say on air we're going to cover the news until the war is over, there's always a little bit of the caveat in the background. If we can't even pay basic things like rent, you know, we have to go do something else for 60 hours a week to be able to pay the rent. So I got to thank you so much, Activista, for supporting the channel so massively, because you're helping us to make this thing possible. And I got to thank you so much for the support, because it is y'all who make this thing possible. I don't say that just, you know, to thank people and make them feel like they're appreciated. Y'all truly are what keeps the gears grinding behind the scenes and makes it possible for us to keep the lights on and keep everything else running, so that way we can get on here every night and we can spend 60 hours a week doing this instead of an additional probably 30 hours a week working on law school and writing notes and stuff like that. I feel like we spend our time a lot better here, helping out Ukraine, helping covering the news. And I got to thank folks like you, Activista, who appreciate that and support us so that way we can make this thing possible. Because, once again, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be live on air right now, and it means a lot to us. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, Activista is a she, and I unconsciously always say he every single time, but I meant to say she the whole time. So sorry about that, Activista, for the mix-up. And also sorry to everyone else who had mixed that up as well, because I literally do that on everyone. But anyways, on the next one, we have a $20 donation, actually £20, very heavy, from Butchie777. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. And they said, for the Plum Fund. Oh, lovely. He says, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I wish I could help out more, but things are a little slow after Christmas. And please, sir, can I have a plum? Dress them off. Oh, watch out.
And, would you like a plum? And I got to thank you so much, once again, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And, of course, it is viewers like you who help to make this thing possible. And I got to thank you so much for the Plum Fund. We love the plums. And also, I thank you so much once again for appreciating what we're doing and helping us to keep this thing running. Because, hey, like I said just a moment ago, you are what's making this channel possible. And so with that, let's see here. And also, I completely understand with things being slow after Christmas. I never want viewers to feel like they have to support the channel. But at the same time, like with right now, it's starting to get, like, and I hate to say this because it makes it sound like, I don't really know what it makes it sound like, but I want everyone to know that we are always appreciative of the viewers who support the channel. But one thing is that, you know, once there's a bottom out threshold that we reach, it starts to get to the point where, you know, because we both have to get paid, you know, neither of us are making enough to cover rent and things like that. So I got to thank you so much for supporting it. And I know that it's slow after Christmas, and I got to thank you so much for supporting the channel anyways, because it means a lot to us, and it does help us to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. And I hope that does address that well. And we will make sure to take a chat and show you Etanona Prapasna. And what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question is going to go to Nira, who says, do you think Ukraine will get the MD-500 helicopter?
And I would say the MD-500?
MD, is that McDonnell Douglas?
Let's see, MD-500 helicopter. This is what I would call the Loach. This is what some people would know. Let's see here. Let me make sure. There's a military version of this thing out there somewhere, isn't there? Well, so I don't know. Let me check this out. Okay. So I don't know what's up with this because I swear there is. Oh yeah, it's the OH-6. But I'll show it to y'all. This is one of my favorite helicopters ever. This thing, the Egg, the Hughes 500D, or as it's being called here, and let me make sure I get it right, the MD.
That's a buzzard.
The Buzzard?
Yeah, yeah, man, that's the Buzzard attack chopper off of GTA 5. Literally, that's the exact thing. Like, everyone who plays that game's gonna know what this is right off the bat.
Well, I got to tell you this. I really like these things. They're pretty neat. They're really cool, in my opinion. This used to be the Army's recon helicopter for the Air Cav before it got replaced by the Kiowa, and now the Kiowa is getting replaced by something else. These things are incredibly cool, and were around for Vietnam. Let me go find a picture of the OH-6. Here we go. Here's the Army recon version of the MD-500. It's pretty cool. Let me see if I can go find a more modernized picture of this thing. Here we go. Here's a special forces team, I'm assuming, sitting on the sides of the Little Bird. It's a super cool helicopter. I mean, who cannot like this thing?
Dude, that's literally a buzzard. I've never known what that was in real life. That's literally the buzzard right there.
You're like
all it's missing is the rocket pod and junk on the side of it.
Man, you're tweaking. You're like, oh god, man.
It's so close. I've always wondered what this is in real life. I'm glad to know what it is.
These things are cool. I really like them. I think they're neat. I think they're a really cool design, really neat philosophy. Apparently, they're still used by the United States Army Aviation, the U.S. Border Patrol, and the U.S. Navy. But beyond that, well, sorry, that's actually the former operators. Now, the only operators in the U.S. are the U.S. Army Aviation, which apparently now it's the AH-6 instead of the OH-6, but also the Gainesville Police Department in Florida, the Chilton County Sheriff's Department, and the Atlanta Police Department.
Wait a minute, Chilton? Where's that at?
They don't even have a page. They don't even have a page.
Surely that's not Alabama.
Nah, it's not Alabama, man. Chilton County's like in the middle of nowhere in Alabama. There's no way they'd have a helicopter. But still, a really cool helicopter. I like these things, me personally, and I'd have to say, honestly, my favorite helicopter. I hope that addresses your chat well. And also, hold up. 87 of these were smuggled to North Korea. What do you know? What do you know? Wow, the world's such a small place. I can't believe it.
I guarantee you that Kim requested that model specific because he plays GTA and he said, I want that one out of GTA. I want the buzzard. He said, find me some 47 buzzards and bring them here.
Dude,
I said, yes, sir.
They were like, aye, Captain. They brought this thing over. But wow, man, isn't that crazy? You know what's even crazier? I think I can find a picture of this thing. Let me go type in the AH-6 because I think that's its designation. Let's see here, the AH-6. Here we go. Oh, yeah, this is the one that's actually in GTA. Look, it's got the chain gun, the 12.7 millimeter Gatling gun right there.
Yeah, that's like very close to it.
Oh, dude, these things are neat. Super cool. And let me see here. Here's some extra loadouts. We got 7.62 M134 miniguns. We got a rocket pod for Hydras. And then we have what appears to be a Dumbfire Hellfire AGM-114 and then something else over here. Overall, though, I love these things. And I hope that addresses your live chat well because these things are truly my fave. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, Michael Malachowski in the live chat said it is Chilton County, Alabama. And let me tell you, I don't know why Chilton County has their hands on Little Bird, if that is definitely true, because there's nothing out in Chilton County that warrants having a military helicopter like that. Not at all.
I don't know,
unless
man.
they just like we're dying to save up and get one and just fly it for the hell of it. But what are you going to say?
Dude, I mean, it is Clanton after all. You know, they might need some extra firepower to keep them down, you know? The Clantonites.
Dude, Clanton does not need a damn Little Bird. Like, come on. That's like San Diego or wherever it is having that like armored Bobcat. They don't need that either. It's like this is not like Saudi Arabia or something.
So where the hell's the helipad? That's what I want to know. Where's the helipad? Let's see. Can we see it just sitting around the jail? No, it's not out here. Let's see. Would it be at the local airport? Maybe it's out here. Let's see here.
What the hell is that?
I think that's the windsock. Yeah, that's the windsock. And then they have
Oh.
like a circle made around. That's confusing. But let's see. There's the National Guard. Where the hell would this thing be stored even? Maybe here. Maybe they roll it out of this one like hanger off to the side. But man, Chilton County having a freaking little bird. Now that's something, man. Like that really is something. You know, they must be having issues out in Clanton, man. Like this is the, by the way, y'all, this is the town I'm talking about. This is the town of Clanton in Alabama. No offense to them. You know, I don't know why, but it's considered like an armpit of the state. Honestly, it's not that bad of a place. It's just another small town. But I don't know. The jokes about Clanton are endless here in Alabama. But I guess the jokes are well-founded because they have a freaking attack helicopter in the police department. So I'm going to figure out why. I'm just going to call up their police department and be like, well, so why do y'all have a little bird? And we're going to find out why. But nevertheless, thank you so much for pointing that out and sharing with us. It is actually Chilton County, Alabama. Because that's adding a whole lot of extra detail. Because we, you know, not to rabbit hole too much, but Matthew and me have actually traveled Interstate 65 from Birmingham to Montgomery millions of times. And you pass by Clanton every single time. If I knew they had a helicopter, I would be following the speed limit to a T. Because the speed limit is enforced by aircraft. I'm just kidding. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel keep running and sharing that with us. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and also, Activista meant to put in a comment earlier, but it didn't get attached because YouTube's weird about that. So Activista said, what you're doing is hard, but it's the hard things that give you courage in the future, and own the difficult. And man, I'll tell you what, we're owning that difficult. We're buying it. We're buying the difficult. But seriously, though, that is good advice because, you know, like the enforcer said, we were giving some thought to whether or not law school is the way forward or not, and we've decided it is. Mainly because if I just walked off from it, just because it got difficult, that would not be a good thing. And second of all, just because it gets difficult, that is not a good reason to simply leave it. So we're going to stick with it. We're going to suffer through it. And we've been told that after the first year, it gets better. So I'm trusting and believing in everyone that said that. So I'm going to hold y'all accountable that said it. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much, Activista, for the words of encouragement. And I got to thank you for just giving us some words of encouragement to go off of. It's tough sometimes to manage everything because there's a lot of stress things that are always going on in the background for us, but we, you know, still want to make sure to press on and run this channel. You know, we're covering this. That's stressful in its own right because that takes a lot of time out of every day, 6 days a week. But then there's also law school, which now takes up the rest of that day. So, you know, we're going like 20 hours a day again, 5 days a week. So that's, you know, a big thing. Then also, there's other things like my car just went in for servicing and I found out the thing's nearly broken down. So then that's a whole other level of stress that I got to figure out what am I doing with the car. And, you know, there's a million things going on. And I got to thank you for giving me and Matthew some words of encouragement because during times like all of these, it just becomes incredibly stressful. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating what we're doing and telling us to commit to that grind. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5. And also, CK, they said take a live chat question, and we shall. And thank you very much for that support. And the live chat is going to go to Hoodoo Texas, who says, do you think Putin is a psychopath, a rational dictator, or a reasonable person caught up by the circumstance, or a hero for Russia?
A psychopath. That's it, no doubt about it. I think he is a psychopath. And so I hope that addresses that live chat well. And I don't think there's much more I can add. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Evanescent Wave, who puts in a $25 donation and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Evanescent Wave. I do love the little profile picture there. I do love it, certainly. And unfortunately, no comment to address. But Enforcer, what say you?
And boom! And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Evanescent Wave, and helping us to keep this thing running because, well, with folks like you, we're able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. And thank you for being one of our dual NAFO Lee Spring Army members. That is really cool to know that folks like you are around and always watch the channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Manzour Gaston, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And he said, I love you guys in LSA. And likewise, Manzour, likewise.
And likewise, Monsieur Gaston. And we love all of y'all. And we love you, Monsieur Gaston. And Lee Spring Army all the way. Lee Spring Army until the cows come home, baby. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Garner, who puts in a 10. And it says, for the channel, but mostly the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. And John, I gotta say, the chat is something. The chat's fun. Lots going on in the chat all the time. And I gotta thank you for the support and being one of those people who really do enjoy the chat. And so thank you so much once again, because your support is helping us to keep the stream running so that way this chat can stay here. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steve Alexander, who puts in a 5 and says, Saudi cut its oil prices to Asian customers to get market share back from Russia, and India's trimmed Russian oil buys. And thoughts?
I would have to say that's probably good, because if it's oil not being bought from Russia and it's just being bought from anywhere else, that's better, because that's once again crippling the Russian economy. Although for a temporary time, that probably will be helping out the Chinese if it's just being sold to the Asian market in general. But right now, we're trying to cripple the Russians as quickly as possible, and we're still trying to cripple the Chinese, but we don't have to do it that quickly for now. So I would say that's a better change of events than what we were seeing in the past. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Heather Fitzgibbon, who throws in a 10. And thank you very much, Heather, for that support as well. And she said, a lot of doctoral programs try to run you off during the first year, and hang in there. And I'm telling you what, I don't know why they do it like that, because 1 year of law school is like, it's good in a respect because you're learning about what you want to learn about, but it's also somewhat like hell, if I'm being perfectly honest. And it seems a lot of our peers seem to think that as well. And also, if you do a search on the internet of people in their 1 year, they also seem to agree at other law schools. So I don't know why they do it like that. I guess they're trying to prep you for the practice of law. That maybe that's a reason. But that first year is tough. I can attest to that. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the support, Heather Fitzgibbon, LSA. And I have to thank you for the words of encouragement. It's tough. Oh, it's tough. And we're trying to hang in the best we can, the best way we know how, which is just to get to it and stick with it. We could have been run off of YouTube. We could have been run away from law school. We could have been run away from everywhere. But the truth is that you got to stick with stuff, and you just got to keep doing it because you know it's the right thing to do. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support, Heather, and helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to make this thing possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to hang in there, both on the channel and on law school. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Sarge, for that support. And they said, with so many global conflicts on the verge of happening, for example, Israel versus Lebanon, the Koreas, and America versus Iran, and China versus Taiwan, which one will be the flashpoint of World War III?
Oh, that's a question that's been asked for 2 years. It's a good one, though. It's a really good one. And the thing is that nobody knows. If I gave you a clear answer, I would be a fool, because I would be telling you something that I have no idea would happen. Because, a lot of people thought 2 months ago that the whole Israel thing was going to be the flashpoint because Iran was getting involved and things were getting heated. It didn't turn out to be that way. Things get really close to it, and that's what makes it really hard for me to give you an answer, because, Iran and Israel could have been the flashpoint. That could have been World War III. China and Taiwan could be World War III. North Korea and South Korea could be World War III. Ukraine and Russia could still end up being World War III. There's really no way to tell, because it really just depends on the events that unfold from here. Someone could get bombed, and then that creates the Third World War. But there's just no real good way to say or tell. And 99% of the time, the answer to that question would be wrong. But with that out of the way, I'm going to say, if anything would lead to a world war, it probably would be China and Taiwan. That's the one I think would most likely lead to it. It doesn't appear that Ukraine would. It appears that this most likely will, because we have a very strong policy of Chinese containment, and an outright provocation like that by the Chinese would probably lead to a very strong American response, maybe even an armed one. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and asking a really good question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Siri, who puts in a 10, and says, y'all are awesome. Thank you, Siri. And said, at the risk of being irreverent, just always remember, if you go home with somebody and they don't have books, don't screw with them.
Dang. Dang, man. Well, I gotta thank you for the support. I gotta say, you're awesome too, Siri, and thank you for the support. And also, yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that, I suppose. But still, thank you for the support. It helps this channel to keep running, Jack. You know what I mean? And I gotta thank you once again. I mean, I don't really go around making that a habit or anything, but still, thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you once again for helping this channel to keep running. It's a good point. Great point. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mark Gagne, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support. And sadly, no comment to address. But we do appreciate it, Mark, and thank you for helping to keep the channel running. And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment yet again, while I stutter the hell through these segments right here. And thank you very much for that $2 support. And Sarge says, smash that like button and jaga jaga.
And hey, and I gotta say, smack that like button, baby, and chugga chugga. And thank you so much, Sergeant Figment, for supporting the channel and helping us keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, you know where we'd be? Nowhere. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Quiet Karma, who puts in a 2 and says the U.S. has fueling ships to refuel at sea.
And that's true. And I thank you for the support. I forgot to throw that in because we do have oil tenders to deal with the ships that are not nuclear powered. So that is true. The entire carrier group could just stay at sea. They don't even have to rotate out the destroyers. That was a complete fallacy on my end a while ago, and I thank you for correcting that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Gerald Mansfield, who also puts in a 2, but Gerald does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, good sir, for helping to keep us running. And then we have a 2 from Mike Sobczynski, who says, do you know anything about Ecuador? And man, I'm telling you what, Ecuador, they're having some trouble down there, if you're not aware, so some big trouble.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
Actually, I'd have to be quite honest with you. I'm completely ignorant to the Ecuadorian situation at the moment. I would have to do
They've got armed gangs running around the whole place, like running into TV stations, taking it over at gunpoint. And I'm not sure, but I think the last I saw, the Ecuadorian government had to declare a state of internal war or something like that, because it's literally countrywide, from my understanding. But don't quote me on that.
Dang, man. I did not hear about any of that. But I'll have to look into that a little bit more and try and get some information on it so that way I can talk about it knowledgeably, because at the moment I've been completely focused on the Middle East, Ukraine, and East Asia. And while the Venezuelan situation went on and I kind of paid attention to that a little bit, I have not been paying attention a lot to South America, to be completely honest. But I'll make sure to read up on that and try and get some info if I can. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, we are fresh out of Super Chat questions. So we're moving on to our multiple live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tidelines LSO, and David Millsaps. And they said tonight's Morse code cipher is, can there ever be the chance that Ukraine is going to be the underdog? And long live the LSA. LSA.
and that's the sound up, money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. Y'all got that right. The right kind of way. And I gotta respect that. Mad respect. Mad respect. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support. Helping this. Oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong thing. Thank y'all for deciphering the Morse code message. And Ukraine will never be the underdog. Ukraine's always going to be the up dog. What's up, dog? And so with that, thank y'all for deciphering the Morse code message. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the live chats. We actually have one more super chat to address from Barry Woodward, but once we address that, we are going to be getting 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we're on to that next one.
And Barry puts in the 10. And thank you, Barry, very much for that support. It's an LSA sale today only. Enforcers Exparency. How much you looking for? 6 days a week. LSA grows weekly.
And I thank you so much for the support, Barry, and an interesting question. That is something I can't really answer because, you know, support-wise, I think that's what the question is asking. Support-wise, we're not looking for like a set target goal or anything. I'm just wanting to make sure that the channel is supported well enough that we both can make sure to keep the lights on and keep everything running. And recently, it's not to talk about it a lot because I don't want to just harp on it, but recently it has been starting to drop. Not because, viewers are, I guess just not caring. I think it's because, people are getting stretched thin, or something along those lines, but it's starting to drop to the point that we're starting to question whether we can actually continue to sustain ourselves doing this full time. So, that's really what it's come to. It's not like a specific target goal or anything. It's just, we want to make sure that everything's able to run properly. That's really it. But with that, I got to thank you for the support, Barry. And the LSA does grow weekly. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Well, what's actually the first live chat of the night.
All right. And our first live chat of the night goes to CN, who says, who decided what soldiers get weapons that come with all the attachments versus no attachments?
Usually that decision is relegated down at the battalion or regimental level here in the United States. Some battalions and regiments will, and even sometimes it's a brigade level thing, or let me think, there's the battalions, regiments. What the hell? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't think of what's in between regiment and brigade, but
regiment and brigade. Let's see. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know either. But usually it's given down what will be the requirements for a unit, and sometimes that's relegated by the doctrine. So a mechanized brigade may have different loadouts than, say, an armored brigade or something similar. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because that's about the best explanation I can give as to why the weapons sometimes have different loadouts. And sometimes soldiers buy them on their own, and they just kit out their own guns themselves. And sometimes that also happens in the U.S. military as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much for asking a really good question. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jonathan Schott, who says, have either of you heard of anything happening on Russia's northern border, like happenings with Finland and Sweden sending troops to the Balkans?
Can you reread that again?
They said, have either of you heard anything happening on Russia's northern border, like happenings with Finland and Sweden sending troops to the Balkans?
I haven't heard about that, because sending troops to the Balkans means that they're down here. Down around Turkey. So I would say I haven't heard about that, and I'd have to unfortunately declare ignorance on that at the moment. I'll look into that a little bit after stream and see if I can get back with you on an answer. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Lawrence Todd, who says, do you think either side will start recovering some of the combat loss armor if the front moves either way to allow it without getting hit by artillery assets?
I would say probably so. Just because not all tanks are completely destroyed. Some of them are recoverable, and we know that the Russians end up abandoning a large amount of recoverable vehicles on the field. So if the front did move, I think they'd probably be able to recover maybe a handful of usable tanks, maybe a dozen or so, but it wouldn't be an incredibly large amount. They wouldn't be able to replenish all of their losses during that months of time just from that one frontline advance. It maybe just be a few tanks here and there. But I hope that does address that quite well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run this stream nightly at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 days a week, every day but Monday, covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Get you some rest. Slava Ukraine, Heram Slava, and good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.